Walking along the wall of a school, a man takes in his sights. He turns a few corners and basks in nature as he listens to the sound of what only could be an insect's voice. Being the intellectual he is, he slows down to appreciate the insect's call. Deciding it is too precious to part ways with, he continues towards the sound, only to find something much more astonishing. A cluster of bobbing lanterns, floating around in all different shapes and sizes. Ones he describes you might see at a festival. Now remember, this is based in a more traditional time in Japan. Festivals were celebrated based on religion, belief, and culture. Colors of crimson, pink, indigo, green, purple, and yellow flashed around. He was most amazed at the lantern that glowed with 5 colors all at once. Although some were store-bought, he relished in the fact that the children holding these lanterns had made them themselves. Such an odd scene, he thought, must only be in fairy tales. The story goes on. One of these children had heard the insect, so he decided to get himself a store-bought lantern and head towards the noise. A day passes by, and another kid joins, but this time he one-ups the kid and makes his own lantern, putting the first kid to shame. The number of kids continued to grow, all coming with their own lanterns. The size grew from 5 to 7 to 20 almost at the blink of an eye, as every kid wanted to find another bug that could make such an interesting noise. We soon see our narrator becoming more and more interested in the kids and their antics. He studies the children's lanterns as he discovers they have carved their own names into each of their own, so the candle's lights would shine through the color of the lantern and shine their name into the darkness. As the kids come together, they crowd a bush where they hear the insects call. Does anyone want a grasshopper? A question that would get anyone excited. The kids all swarm the one boy, all eager to hold what they have been hunting for.
However, he waited until one specific young lady came to retrieve the coveted hopper. He was most excited to give her the bug, yet when she finally got it in her own hands, she realized it was not a grasshopper at all, but rather a bell cricket. The narrator observed how this mistake embarrassed the boy a little more than it probably should have, and the realization dawned upon him that all of the young boy's actions and reactions stemmed from his crush on the girl. This was when the narrator noticed that the personalized lanterns both of the children had made had projected their names onto one another's kimonos. Fujio on Kyoko's and Kyoko on Fujio's. He marveled at how, even though both of them may remember this moment of giving and receiving the cricket, neither will ever know the fact that their name had been splashed across the other's clothing. He then went on to address Fujio directly in his observations, noting how the young boy will grow up and will most likely find that many girls who seem rare like the crickets will turn out to be grasshoppers, and that when he does find a cricket, he will still probably confuse her for a grasshopper, just as he had that night. Firstly, let's take a look at the significance of the title in relation to the story. The grasshopper and the bell cricket are both mentioned in this story multiple times. We are provided with the fact that there is a difference, albeit slight, between the two bugs and the interaction between the boy and the girl, when she points out that he had mistaken the bell cricket for a grasshopper. Bell crickets, in reality, are actually much more rare in comparison to grasshoppers. Very little interesting factoid. Which is a distinction that Kawabata uses to send a much more symbolic message to the young boy, which is that he will find a girl like a grasshopper, whom he thinks is a bell cricket, and vice versa as he navigates the world of love. This concept of blindness is developed through even more symbolism with the interaction between the two children. If you remember from the summary, as they were looking at the bell cricket together, their names, which they had put on their lamps, projected onto the other. Very romantic. In the words of Mark Robbins, author for Marymount University's Reading Journal, the lanterns represent their souls, each unique, bright, full of fire. When close enough physically, their souls interact, or at least imprint on one another. Very Twilight. When close enough, however, the narrator emphasizes the fact that neither of them notice this phenomenon. This shows how they're in their naive ignorance, or possibly a belief that they are not worthy, they do not realize their obvious feelings for one another.
Very interesting. Let's continue with the lanterns. Earlier in the story, we see the young boy who bought the red paper lantern from the store throw his out, thinking his lantern is not as good as the other kids. What he doesn't know is the kid who made his own lantern didn't think his was good enough, so he threw his away. What can we take away from this? What can we take away from this? The meaning behind not being good enough and how different people see it and approach it.
Mm-hmm.
The first little boy who bought his lantern saw how great everyone else's was, all decorated and colorful. Feeling inferior, he threw his store-bought, unoriginal lantern out. The second little boy compared his homemade lantern to the store-bought one. His didn't seem as clean-cut and neatly decorated, therefore feeling inferior to the little boy's store-bought red lantern.
Ooh.
Get it?
Yeah.
All right. Now, here's the real shocker. Through all the facts and all the details, we can take away that the narrator of this story may just be the little boy. Now think, the narrator knows every detail about the night. And he even says, silly me, not to understand his actions until now. Talking about the little boy. This is what gives it away. He could be looking at his younger self and realizing now his true feelings and intentions for doing the things he did. Trying to get closer to the girl to him back then, maybe it was a new feeling and he just wasn't sure what it meant. But now that he's older and knows more about life and how his life in particular turned out, he can understand what his actions truly meant.